Good evening. Let me clarify this thing again. The message that God is giving me. He says I must make another video to the Zimbabweans. What you need to understand, Zimbabweans, is that these ex-Rhodesians who are influencing King Charles, they want Zimbabweans to suffer. You understand? These people look at black Zimbabweans, they see us suffering and they enjoy. They find pleasure in it. They say, when they see us suffering, they will be like, good to them, or good for them, or whatever, because they took our Rhodesia, or they are still angry with things that happened in the 1970s. They are alive. Surely, when they die, people die anyway out of old age. In 40, 50 years, the thinking of the British politicians will be different because it will no longer be influenced by these ex-Rhodesians. God said to me, they are old. I remember last year the Lord said something when I was making one of these videos. He said, it seems like the older they become, the more evil they get. And I didn't know who he was talking about. I was like, which politicians is he talking about? Didn't explain. It's only now that it's become clear to me. Who are these ones who are getting older? The Lord was talking about them last year. He said, it seems the older they get, the more evil they get. They are refusing to set Zimbabwe free. They are ex-Rhodesians. Remember, they are white, they are beaten, they've got access to the British Parliament, so they can influence British parliamentarians. They've got access to even to King Charles, so they can influence the British monarch to keep Zimbabwe poor. You see, this fight that Triple C has with Idi Mnangagwa, they love it. They love it. That's what they want to see. You see, they would sponsor Chamisa, but they wouldn't sponsor Chamisa so that Chamisa should win. No. They will sponsor Chamisa so that he will look as if he's going to win, and they will bring a few aid here and there. This is actually a narcissistic behavior. There is nothing like a narcissist who wants to destroy your life and then becomes the one who gives you food. So that they'll be like, oh, so that we can depend on them, so that we can worship them. But though you have got capacity to do things on your own, they don't want you to stand on your own. They want you to fail and then come and give you breadcrumbs. Right now, Zimbabweans are being given visas to go to the UK to become nurses, to become first aid, this and that, but they are being overworked, underpaid. But that's what Zimbabweans get in UK. It appears better to the Zimbabweans. You know why? Because the situation is worse in Zimbabwe. But that worse situation is caused by the very same British that you are going to wash. Those 8-year-old, 90-year-old things that are waiting to die. Those are the ones that are busy influencing King Charles and the British Parliament for Zimbabwe to keep suffering. And as the country suffers, it becomes a total pariah, totally dead and miserable. Zimbabweans are toiling, and therefore they're going to say, beg Britain for mere jobs. No matter what you ask them to do, they will do, because there's no job in Zimbabwe. Those jobs are destroyed because they have sponsored a political system. You see, these guys are very clever. Very, very clever. Don't play. You know that this British, God helps us, because it's only Jehovah who's going to set us free from these things, Zimbabwe. These people are so clever. They are able to web themselves into a political system that will lead to failure. And it's a racist policy. Okay, it is a racist policy that they have undertaken, and you will not see them walking in the streets of Harare. All you see is black people fighting each other. You will see Mnangagwa stealing. But who is aiding Mnangagwa to steal? Who is keeping him in power? Who is inviting them to the United Nations? Who 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 legitimizes the ZANU-PF regime except Britain and the global powers? They can talk and say human rights. This, you see, that's why I'm telling you that these guys are narcissists. When they complain about human rights abuse in Zimbabwe, hear me very well. They're not complaining because they want ZANU-PF to stop abusing human beings. No, they like it. In the background, they're like, yes, abuse those Zimbabweans. Then they come to the front and say, we denounce Mnangagwa's abuse of human rights, blah, 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 Zimbabwe economy, blah, 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 blah. And they sound nice, and then they sponsor a few NGOs here and there in Zimbabwe and send some maize and send some things with it's written, I don't know whether they write British aid, whatever they write, but it will make you look back to the master. the colonial master. You're always looking unto Britain. Here is the word of the Lord to you, O Britain. God is going to save Zimbabwe with or without the colonial masters. And Robert Mugabe wasn't a crazy guy. He was speaking the truth when he was saying that the British are attacking him. ZANU-PF was not lying when it says that the British are attacking them. Indeed, but them, they also were corrupt. Not only were the British attacking them, but they were also corrupt and willing to destroy Zimbabweans. But it doesn't nullify the fact that the British were also attacking ZANU-PF for the purposes of attacking me and you as a Zimbabwean. Right now, we need to hurry up and rally behind the word of the Lord that I'm giving you and follow this prophet of God that is speaking to you and not be stubborn. And I don't understand these Zimbabweans. I don't know what the stubbornness of Zimbabweans when God speaks but they don't recognize. I also don't understand the Christians because if you're a Christian and God speaks, the Bible says, "My people recognize my voice." You should be recognizing right now, but for some reason, that word, I don't know, maybe it's the devil that is closing their eyes or their minds. Well, in any case, it is the glory of God to do certain things. There are certain things that it is only the glory of God and not the wisdom of men or the righteousness of men. So Zimbabwe is going to be delivered by the wisdom of God. Because as I'm telling you right now, for those of you, 5 or 7 of you who care enough to listen, it will just end here between the few of us. You will begin to understand now what it means to get deeper in the Lord. There's few people who get deeper in the Lord. So when you get deeper, you hear things that the majority don't understand. They think that you are crazy because they never get deeper. They just in the shallows. To them, Britain is our friend. But when you get deeper, God shows you those strange things that no, they could be your friend, but at the same time, they are your foe. But they are both friendly and both intentionally moving forward to hate Zimbabwe. And if there's anyone who comes with strategies of truthfully healing Zimbabwe, the British will not support that person. They will take an active role in making sure that that person does not succeed. Just like my channel is attacked, and I do believe it's the British, so that it doesn't grow, so that nobody can know. So they will keep on sponsoring or, or appearing as if they're sponsoring some voices that are against human rights abusers or oppression, but they will never carry it on to victory. They can bring about victory. If we think I'm lying, look at white countries. They are all stable. Look at black countries, all destabilized. It's by design. That's what I'm trying to say. It's by design. It's not like white people in Europe cannot be crazy like blacks. They can be crazy, they can be corrupt, they can do all things. But because of politics and the rule of law in the system is able to rein in on those things and keep it in a minimum and make sure that the leaders do the right thing. But then in countries that they do not like Zimbabwe, countries that Britain does not like, they will make sure that politicians that harm people are left to do as they please, but they will be vocal. They will be talking against them. Talking about the Britain has been the biggest, it's been the most vocal against ZANU-PF, against Robert Mugabe, against Kukraut, against all of it for the past 43 years. But they did nothing about it, even though they appealed it. But when they had to remove, what's his name there in Tripoli, what's his name? Benghazi, yeah, that African dictator in Gaddafi. When they needed to remove Gaddafi, it took them 1 day. Gaddafi was gone. When the Americans needed to remove Saddam Hussein 1 day he was gone. All of this talking for 43 years wasn't there. What am I saying? I'm saying that I'm not saying they must come to Harare and to shoot at Mnangagwa or kill Mnangagwa. No, I'm not advocating for that. What I'm saying is that they do have the capacity to eventually force for change. In 1979, did they not force Smith to get out? They did. In 1994, did they not force the apartheid government to go out? They did. Across Africa, all of these liberation movements, was it not the British and the Americans who facilitated for democracy in Africa? It is them. But why is it that now when ZANU-PF is oppressing people for 43 years, they are doing nothing? what I'm saying is they do have the capacity to bring about a change through whatever means. It does, as I said, they don't have to do a Gaddafi style. They they can put enough pressure to make Mnangagwa go out. You see, Mnangagwa banks all over the world. The British and the Americans know exactly his bank accounts. They know everything. There's no secret that they do not know. They even hacked his phone. You know, we're talking about a world whereby all of our phones are hacked. There's no information that they do not know. They know where to hold that man accountable and bring him to justice even tomorrow. Let me tell you something. If if King Charles' life depends on Mnangagwa being out of power, if God gives King Charles 3 days to live, and everybody can see that that's whatever, I'm just giving an example, that you have got 3 days to live. The only way you can survive is Mnangagwa to be out of power. I'm telling you, Britain will remove Mnangagwa within a couple of hours. Why? Because they can. But the reason why they are not removing him is because they don't want to remove him. My point is that they don't want to remove him. Not only Britain, but also certain voices in the United States, a lot of leaders in Europe who like it like that in Zimbabwe. They can. They can be a coalition of global leaders. They can bring a change in Zimbabwe. And Mnangagwa cannot say anything because remember, his sovereignty is dependent upon global leaders. If people at the United Nations can say, we disagree with him, Mnangagwa, he can no longer be president. He won't. He won't be. But they want to keep him like that. It's the same thing with North Korea. They like him there. The global leaders don't think that they don't want North Korea to exist. It exists because they let it to exist. You understand? So countries like Zimbabwe, which are small with the regimes like ZANU-PF who oppress people, these global leaders, I am putting squarely the blame on the global leaders, as they are the ones that are going to answer on the judgment day of the Lord. They are the ones who are going to go to hell for the suffering of Zimbabweans because they could and they can do something about it. But however, they choose and deliberately choose to ignore the situation because that is what they want. They want to see black people in Zimbabwe suffering these white Rhodesians in Britain. That is my accusation. If they disagree with me, may they go to King Charles and tell King Charles to put pressure on the ZANU-PF regime to get out of power and let Zimbabwe be free. As I told you in the previous video, if we don't do that, God will punish King Charles III's family. His reign is going to be short, and his reign is going to be and his kingdom is going to be smaller. That's a judgment that God said in the previous video. Remember, it's not my own judgment. It's based on his lack of action in Zimbabwe. Have a good evening.